everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Amid renewed trade pressures from the United States, the White House press secretary says she does not have a timeline for Trump's stated plan to raise tariffs on South Korea. Seoul's national security advisor warned that the tariff threat is shaking the broader diplomatic framework South Korea has built with the U.S., China, and Japan. South Korea posted a record-high annual current account surplus last year, led by strong exports amid strong semiconductor demand. It totaled more than $123 billion, surpassing the previous high set in 2015. After the nuclear treaty between the U.S. and Russia limiting nuclear arms expired this Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump is calling for a new deal, rather than extending it, pushing for a broader agreement that includes China. Trump also publicly endorsed Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi ahead of Japan's general election this weekend, calling her a wise leader. We begin this morning with the White House walking back expectations of an imminent tariff hike on South Korean goods, saying it has yet to set a timeline for Trump's threatened increase. Our Moon Hye-ryun starts us off.
The White House says it has not yet decided when higher tariffs threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump on South Korean goods would take effect, leaving Seoul facing continued uncertainty as high-level negotiations remain stalled. Speaking at a briefing on Thursday local time, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said she did not have a specific timeline for raising tariffs on South Korea from 15% back to 25%, despite the president's earlier warning. She added that the administration's trade team would provide further clarification, signaling that internal discussions are still underway. Trump publicly criticized delays in South Korea's legislative process tied to a bilateral trade agreement and warned he could reinstate higher duties on Korean goods. That move would roll back concessions Washington had offered in exchange for large-scale South Korean investment commitments in the U.S. In response, South Korea's top trade officials rushed to Washington for emergency talks, while Foreign Minister Cho Yeon continues meetings with U.S. policymakers in an effort to prevent the tariff hike. Despite those efforts, Seoul has yet to secure a clear reversal, and government officials say U.S. agencies are still discussing whether and how the tariff increase would be formally announced. Meanwhile, concerns are growing in Seoul that the tariff dispute is spilling into the security arena. National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak warns that renewed tariff pressure is shaking the broader diplomatic framework South Korea has built with the United States, China, and Japan. In an interview with Gyeongyang Shinmun, Wi said follow-up security consultations with Washington, including talks on nuclear-powered submarines and nuclear fuel issues, have slowed since President Trump revived the tariff threat. He added that multiple trade and regulatory disputes, including digital trade rules and a data breach case involving U.S.-listed e-commerce firm Coupang, are further complicating relations. We cautioned that economic and security issues are now becoming intertwined, urging Seoul to respond carefully while maintaining coordination with its key ally. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea has reported its largest annual current account surplus on record for 2025. The Bank of Korea said this morning that the total surplus for the year reached $123.05 billion, capped off by strong performance in December. The country finished the year strongly, with the December surplus alone reaching $18.7 billion. The performance was driven by the goods account, where exports surged around 13% on-year to more than $71 billion, driven by robust demand for semiconductors. While the services account recorded a deficit of nearly $3.7 billion due to the travel sector, the primary income account supported the bottom line with a $4.73 billion surplus from increased equity income. Meanwhile, Bitcoin prices have tumbled sharply, sending the world's largest cryptocurrency to its lowest level since October 2024. According to Coinbase, as of 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time Standard on Thursday, a single Bitcoin was trading at $66,060, down about 8% over the past 24 hours. Overall, Bitcoin is now roughly 24% lower since the start of this year. The drop follows months of strong gains that pushed Bitcoin to a record high of $122,200 in October. Losses have been piling up for several days, with selling pressure intensifying since last week and erasing much of those earlier gains. Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap, also moved lower, shedding around 10% on Thursday and extending its recent slide. So investors are grappling after Bitcoin plunged, while gold and silver prices, as well as stocks, are also seeing sharp swings in recent weeks. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Shin Se-don, professor at the Division of Business Economics at Sookmyung Women's University. Professor Shin, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, my pleasure.
So Bitcoin has been sliding, and it has hit its lowest level since October 2024. Some analysts are even warning of a sharper downturn ahead. Where do you see this heading from here?
Well, I'm not sure because, Bitcoin, in general, cryptocurrencies in general, are such an elusive kind of asset that is very, difficult to predict its future movements. But we have to notice that, the fall in Bitcoin price has started last October 2025, and for the last 4 months, the price of Bitcoin has dropped more than, I think, almost 50%. So we have to ask why the Bitcoin price has been fallen 50% in 4-month period. I think one reason is that big institutional investors like banks, mutual funds, and investment banks, they are kind of throwing away their holdings of Bitcoin. And the possible explanation is that interest rate in the future usually expected to fall at least 3 times or 4 times during the course of a year, but they changed expectation because of sticky inflation. So first reason I think is that the expectation about the interest rate fall in the future has been diminished very, very much for the last, I think, 2 quarters. And another, I think, worry is that there are some specialists like, Michael Burry, who predicted that it has been a bubble in the Bitcoin, and it's going to burst sooner or later. So we have to ask, for the next coming 3 months, whether the price of Bitcoin will fall further from 66,000 today to probably, or 50,000 or even 40,000. That could be possible if this is the beginning of the process of a bubble burst. So I'm not sure where the Bitcoin price will head it to, but I think the possibility is that there's a strong chance that a severe correction may be in the coming down the road.
I see, and it's not just Bitcoin. What was traditionally seen as safe havens like gold and silver have also been on a roller coaster recently. What factors are driving this, and can we still think of these assets as safe havens?
Well, I think the reason that, the price of gold especially, the price of silver has been moving together, but recently, the pattern of change looks a little different between gold and silver. But first of all, I think there has been plenty of liquidity all over the world, not just in the United States, but in China, in Korea, all over. Liquidity has been plenty. And those liquidity has been directed to financial market, stock market and bonds market for the rest of the 2025. But last fall, 2024, because of the change in the Federal Reserve interest rate policy on the one hand, and who's going to be the next chair, because of that uncertainty, the plenty of liquidity has been moving from financial markets to other assets, and that other assets has been the gold. So I think the prime reason for the surge in the gold price has been the major shift of the funds from the financial market to to-go market. And one of the reasons I think is the sticky inflation, making people to expect it is very difficult for the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rate. And another possible, I think, reason is that there has been some talks about the Trump administration prefers lower value in dollar. Scott Bessent has denied that, but some kind of uncertainty about the future course of dollar has been triggered, shift from financial markets to gold markets. So I think correction will follow sooner or later in the price of gold, but I think the surge in the gold price will continue down the road 2026 and possibly 2027 if inflation in the United States cannot be cured sufficiently.
I see. And with those uncertainties, like you just mentioned, stock markets have been on a roller coaster as well. South Korea's market had its worst day in months on Monday, only to surge the very next day. What's triggering this volatility, especially in semiconductor stocks like Samsung and SK Hynix, and what should investors be watching in the short term?
Well, apparently, I think the dramatic fall happens 2nd of February, on which day the price has fallen more than 5%. And very next day, it went up about almost 7%. But 2 days later, to the surge in 3rd of February, it dropped another 7%. So we cannot deny that Kospi has been seeing the surprising volatility during this week. And why such a great fluctuation in Kospi? I think one of the fundamental reasons is that the Kospi has been rising so dramatically, for the last, I think, 6 months, the price went up almost 100%. So the greatest, surge in Kospi has been necessitated, because of such a great rise. So I think correction is necessary, for the good of the Kospi market. I think correction is necessary, but we have to understand the 3 basic uncertainty, concerning Kospi direction in the future. First, what's going to be the U.S. rate policy? There's one fundamental uncertainty in the U.S. rate. There's another uncertainty that has been talking about. It's the uncertainty in the U.S. tariff. We believe it's 15%, and suddenly Trump administration changed to 25%, and still uncertainty in the reciprocal tariff has been around. And the last uncertainty, I think, is the skepticism hovering around AI investment, for the last couple of years. So there has been, a worry about too much, investment in the AI, and that has been dragging the price of stock, regarding AI, products. So I think those 3 uncertainty will determine Korean Kospi in the future: U.S. rate uncertainty, reciprocal tariff uncertainty, and the AI skepticism. I think that are the 3 fundamental reasons that will determine the future course of Kospi in Korea.
Right, and looking more broadly, South Korea's economy is dealing with foreign exchange uncertainty and soaring housing prices. And you also mentioned uncertainties related to U.S. tariffs and U.S. rates. What decision can we expect the Bank of Korea to make on interest rates for South Korea this month? Well,
it is very clear now, it is very clear now that the Korean economy has suffering one very dramatic increase in the housing price on the one hand, and the other one is, Korean exchange rate has been very volatile for the last couple of months. So the fundamental task of the Bank of Korea is to cure the price of house, and secondly, the exchange rate. So the choice of the Bank of Korea is very clear. Bank of Korea cannot, absolutely impossible to lower the rate. And second question is whether the Bank of Korea has to raise the rate. I think at the moment, Bank of Korea is not thinking about raising it, and maybe they will stick to a current rate. But sooner or later, in near future, it is possible the Bank of Korea has to, raise the rate if inflation is not, especially the price of houses and exchange rate do not subdue in coming 3 months. I think the Bank of Korea will have to raise it. So at the moment, they will stick to the current rate, but in the future, there's a strong chance that the Korean the rate will be able to rise further from current level.
I see. All right, Professor Shin, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
After the U.S.-Russia New START treaty expired this Thursday, President Donald Trump is calling for a new nuclear arms control pact as he seeks a broader deal that includes China. Meanwhile, President Trump also publicly endorsed Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi ahead of the country's election this weekend. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump is calling for a new nuclear arms treaty after the expiration of the last major nuclear agreement between the United States and Russia, raising concerns about a possible new arms race. The New START treaty was signed in 2010 and limited deployed strategic nuclear warheads and delivery systems. It was negotiated under President Barack Obama and extended under President Joe Biden. With this expiration, there are now no binding limits on the two countries' strategic nuclear arsenals. President Trump on Thursday called the deal badly negotiated. Posting on Truth Social, he urged nuclear experts to begin work on a new and modernized treaty. Russia had already halted inspections under the treaty as relations with Washington worsened. This week, Moscow said it no longer considers itself bound by warhead limits. The Trump administration wants China included in any future pact. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said China must be part of future nuclear arms talks, citing its rapidly growing stockpile.
Obviously, the president's been clear in the past that in order to have true arms control in the 21st century, it's impossible to do something that doesn't include China because of their vast and rapidly growing stockpile.
However, Beijing has rejected that push, calling the treaty's expiration regrettable and urging the U.S. and Russia to resume talks on stability. The foreign ministry stressed that China strictly adheres to a self-defense nuclear strategy. Meanwhile, President Trump endorsed Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi ahead of Japan's general elections on Sunday, calling her a strong and wise leader. Japanese media predict the ruling coalition could win a solid majority. Pundits say Takaichi supports constitutional revision to expand Japan's military role, and Trump's endorsement could influence the debate as voters head to the polls. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea is stepping up its first major initiative to secure some of the most critical materials for modern technology, rare earths. Now, this comes as the country works to reduce its heavy reliance on critical mineral imports, especially from China. Our Park Jun-an has the details.
The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources unveiled on Thursday the country's first comprehensive rare earth supply chain strategy. The roadmap comes as part of an effort to enhance the country's energy capability by reducing its heavy dependence on imports, especially from China. Rare earths power everything from electric vehicle motors and high-performance magnets to semiconductors and defense systems, which are crucial components for modern technology. Yet, global powerhouses are concerned because China controls roughly 60 to 70% of global mining, 85 to 90% of refining, and over 80% of finished products such as permanent magnets. For a high-tech powerhouse like Korea, specializing in electric vehicles, batteries, and chips, not being able to secure rare earth minerals is a major vulnerability. The government's rare earth supply chain projects include the three major pillars of short-term stability, source diversification and share risks, and lastly, local substitution. For short-term stability, the government will strengthen its cooperation with all sources, designate all 17 rare earths as critical elements, and create new detailed trade codes so it can track supplies much more accurately. Regarding the diversification of sources and shared risk, overseas project financing will see major increases from last year's 39 billion Korean won to 67.5 billion won in 2026, or around $46 million. The government will cover up to 70% of loans from last year's 50%, and if exploration fails, companies will only lose 10% of their investment instead of 20%. The Korea Mine Rehabilitation and Mineral Resources Corporation is coming back after years of being banned from direct overseas investment. The corporation will now lead high-risk projects, so private companies don't have to carry the political risk alone. Lastly, the government will offer subsidies to domestic factories that utilize recycling and change the rules governing this. It will also detail a full R&D roadmap covering the use of substitutes and launch new rare earth R&D funding under its existing Innovation Fund. The government added that it will focus its policy capabilities to build a foundation across the entire rare earth supply chain with unwavering resolve, creating a robust industrial structure that remains steadfast even amid changes in the external environment. 박준환, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Ukraine and Russia on Thursday concluded a second round of peace talks in Abu Dhabi and carried out a prisoner exchange. A U.S. brokered agreement led to the release of 314 prisoners of war, marking the first such swap between the two sides in 5 months. President Vladimir Zelensky said some of those released had been held for nearly 4 years. He confirmed that both sides will likely move to the next phase of negotiations, possibly in the United States. But sharp divisions still remain as Ukraine continues to reject Russian demands for territorial concessions. Nigeria's president on Thursday deployed soldiers in Kwara state after gunmen killed about 170 people in a nighttime assault on a village in the region. The attack in Waro village late Tuesday is among the deadliest this year in the troubled state area, increasingly exposed to violence by armed extremist groups. President Bola Tinubu condemned the attack as barbaric and said the troop deployment aims to stop further attacks and secure remote communities. Survivors of Tuesday's attack say the gunmen targeted the community specifically for refusing to submit it to extremist Sharia rule. Security experts now warn that ISIS-linked factions are aggressively expanding their territory from the north toward the southern Kaindi forests. The Trump administration on Thursday unveiled sweeping changes that would allow the president to more easily fire as many as 50,000 federal employees. The overhaul targets workers that the administration says shape policy without accountability. This move reclassifies 50,000 career employees, effectively stripping them of their long-standing job protections. This grants the president direct authority to terminate the staffer deemed an obstacle to his policy agenda. The administration claims the latest move will ensure government efficiency. Worker unions are challenging the move in court. The U.S. State Department has officially cleared the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics of any immediate security risks. The top security director of the U.S. State Department's Diplomatic Security Service confirmed on Thursday that Italy's concentric rings of protection are sufficient to deter potential attacks. Although officials are monitoring high levels of daily cyber activity and drone risks, they expressed total confidence in Italian law enforcement. Security teams have also mapped out protest zones to ensure American athletes remain insulated from local demonstrations. The Milan Cortina Games kicks off with the opening ceremony on Friday at Milan's San Siro Stadium.
Just when we thought spring was right around the corner, winter made a comeback with a surge of freezing air. Cold wave advisories have been reissued for the capital area, parts of Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do provinces. But the chill will not stop here. By the weekend, morning temperatures here in the capital could be dipping down to minus 12 degrees Celsius, so please plan accordingly for your weekend. On top of the bitterly cold weather, the yellow dust that formed yesterday is still affecting air quality nationwide. Fine dust levels could reach very bad levels in the western parts of Korea, while eastern regions are still under dry weather alerts. And this afternoon, Seoul could get up to minus 3 degrees Celsius, but the biting winds will drag down the feels-like temperatures, and Daegu will make it to 5 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, heavy snow is expected across Jeollado and Jeju through the weekend, so please stay safe and warm.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.